I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm excited to be talking to the wonderful Jeremy Sisto all about his work in FBI. And I love how long you've gotten to spend with this character and playing Jubal, because you've done at this point over 136 episodes of the show over several years. And I've heard you describe how one of the things that you love about working on a procedural show like this is that you get to really discover a character as you're playing them. And given how long you've been playing him for, I was interested in what that looks like several seasons into a show and several episodes, in the way that the writers can still give you backstory or details or things about his life that allow you to continue that discoverability.
Yeah, totally. I think it's more also just like just acting is I mean it's obviously kind of a fun thing, gratifying thing for me, or it's something that at least I'm drawn to. So whether it's the character or not, it gives me like opportunity to to do that a bunch, and to try to figure out how to um have gratifying moments uh within the context of acting on camera. And so that just looks different depending on what's going on in my life. And so to have like this kind of ship, and it's just not as, I just did a movie, and like that's a truncated story that you're trying to tell, this person that you're trying, this character you're trying to tell. And it's just, that's less of what the FBI thing is. It's more of kind of, I don't know. It's just it's an ongoing process. It's the story isn't clear. So there's certain episodes where you're like, I'm telling the story of Jubal's, how he's handling his situation with his son getting sick or whatever. And those are specific stories, but it's just not as it's not as uh hyper focused as it can be in movies. And so for me, it's just there's a freedom to it that I find gratifying, I guess.
And what you were just describing there about, you do sometimes get these moments where you get to see full plot lines of his life outside of work. But also there's times where that's not necessarily in the storyline. But I was curious if you kind of are still thinking about, okay, what do I feel like his day or his week has been like? How do I feel like his personal life is potentially coming or not coming into his work and coming into this case, even if it's not specifically written into the script?
Yeah, I mean, I yes, but I think the thing about procedural is the story that we're telling each week is about a certain crime, a certain dynamics that we're like coming up against, and so um, I would say more so the how that information hits me as the actor, or Jubal as the character, is sort of more the stuff that is that allows you to make some choices that feel like they are impactful within this context, within this medium. Um, sure, there's sometimes I'm doing the other stuff, but I find when I watch it that's not really, it's not necessary. It might be for myself, it's cool, but what is necessary is these is the fans of the show. They know these characters. They have an idea of Jubal, his challenging past, his home life, his personal life being, perhaps a bit more of a challenge for him than his job. And so when he comes upon, some tragedy or some horrific sort of detail that they're trying to explore, his reaction to that is in context to what they know about him. And so I think that's kind of that again provides like a gratifying um, sort of arena for me to explore, and it's not that I'm not always, it's not that I you know I just I want to make my focus on any job worthwhile to the audience. You know what I mean? I don't want to like put a bunch of extra stuff in for me because I don't know. You only have so much room. You know what I mean? And I want to try to make what I do be directed towards those who are watching the show.
There's also so much of your role and your character that is centralized in the jock in the show in every single episode, because your character ultimately is siphoning all of the information to the other characters in the room and on the case, but also very much for the audience. And I was interested in just how you work with the text and the dialogue and what that experience is like when you're giving so much exposition and so much real-time context to viewers.
Yeah, totally. And that was kind of the mission statement, or the experiment in the beginning of this project when I talked to Dick about it, Dick Wolf, the creator, and obviously Dick Wolf, and you know, it was the idea of this real life thing, this jock that opens up in the FBI when there's an active shooter, an active thing going on, threat, and so could we use this device as a mechanism for the show in a different way? I mean, obviously, other procedurals have the office and the analysts, and there's these things, but could we do it in a slightly different way? Because in real life, that room is pretty crazy and pretty active and just high energy and a different energy than a lot of the shows have. So yeah, it was an experiment to find it, and what it's become and what it eventually sort of the sort of the sweet spot of it, both in sort of my intention of what I try to do with it, and sort of how it can work the best within this genre is finding a way to make it feel spontaneous and alive and have discoveries there, and that information that revealing sort of plot, clarifying plot, is really important for these kind of shows, because the things move quickly, and so it actually takes a lot of energy to try to make enough sense out of this information, so for everyone in there to to be able to discover it in a way that feels like you're actually discovering in the moment, and it's like a really specific skill set that me and the other joculars, as they're called, sort of have developed, that kind of doesn't really transfer to any other job in the world. So we figure if the show ever goes off the air, we're gonna start a little block box theater in downtown Manhattan and just do hundreds of hours of these scenes, because we really enjoy doing them. And you know, sometimes they work really well and sometimes they're a little clunkier, but it's just this machine of trying to achieve something that when it works, we're all like, wow, that was awesome. That really, you know, with my with the camera operator Afton, Grant, who's just with us swooping around, and so it's, yeah, it's kind of a very it's actually a much more abstract thing to do. And when we're doing it, there's often moments where we're like, what, this is so what a weird gig we have, but then you cut it together and it really provides like a rhythm for these shows. And so yeah, it's it's an interesting, it's like an adjacent skill to acting. It's a version of acting that's not necessarily on every job.
And even with what you were just describing about wanting the discoverability in scenes in the jock to feel really lively, you know, I've heard you describe previously how they can be really challenging scenes in a lot of ways, because you're always trying to find a way to make it feel different, so it doesn't just feel like the same play by play each time. And even just, you know, what's the level of tension, what's the level of stress in the room at any given point, how is he moving throughout the room, which are the staff that he's interacting with or talking to, and you know, so how do you kind of set about approaching answering that question of what are the challenges of making this particular scene feel different each episode?
Yeah, and it's also like you know, an ongoing process for the writers. It's not an easy thing to write. We have a whole new team um, that started last season, and and it's evolved over the years, and I try to sort of pop in and watch different episodes throughout the seasons to remember, like, oh, there's some stuff here that we were trying that because you get into a rhythm, and right now we're in a certain rhythm that's really good, that has a lot of discoveries in there. But there has been other versions, and sometimes um, yeah, there is some space to find smaller moments. Um, it's yeah, it's an evolving kind of thing. So, and I think the thing is how do we make it human? How do we? But yeah, it's finding the human things for uh, Vidette James and Taylor and I and Alana. It's how do you find the moments where your character can be revealed through response to what's happening in the cases usually. And man, it's been 8 years, so there's been there's been a lot of really great little intimate moments at times that um and that's what's fun to be able to be surprised, that I was considering, and it was a character show, right? So which can be kind of soapy in a way, because if you're a show that's based in inner relationships, um, you're just doing that stuff all the time. And so I imagine that can become, challenging in its own way. Where we have is the character stuff, you're kind of fitting it in, and you're finding moments that feel surprisingly intimate, or surprisingly private. And so yeah, so it's a and I always, whenever I talk to the writers, I'm like, this what I respond to with any writing is when you come from a place of when you're trying to tell a story that you can relate to. And writers' rooms, they change a lot, they evolve, but they can often have a similar situation to the office life that these characters live, where there's a lot of information flying around. And so I encourage them to try to bring their own flavor to it, and they do. And I also tell them, we'll figure it out. There's a balance to the humor that you can have in there, because it's such a dramatic show. So you have this dramatic music going all the time. But Jubal's got a sense of humor, as these other characters do. So I'm like, throw in jokes, and we'll know in the moment if they're too far, and we'll not do them. And so yeah, so it's all about finding the balance of all that stuff that I find just fun, I suppose.
And even one of the things that they threw at you at the end of last season, in the finale for A Brand New Day episode, where essentially you have Jubal and all of his agents stripped of their badges, their weapons, and all of their technology, more importantly, and then setting up a very analog version of Jock in an underground unused subway station. And what was the space that that gave you, of the fact that that's taking your character outside of their comfort zone? But I also imagine for you as an actor, it probably pushed you outside of your comfort zone in a new way in terms of how you thought about those scenes.
Yeah, yeah, that was a fun episode. I mean, I think I don't get to do a lot of running through the streets being shot stuff. I mean, that's not usually in my purview. So, but yeah, that one felt really fun. I mean, obviously, it's a show that each week the stakes have got to be pretty high. That's why people are watching it. So in order to take the stakes to a season ending kind of um, intensity, uh, yeah, the whole existential um, threat that occurred at the end of last season um, was was fun. It was fun. To me. It just felt like there's been some episodes this season too where it kind of took on a vibe of like a movie in the '80s, like a fun action sort of like you know, obviously a seriousness to it, um, but just a fun seeing characters out of their comfort zone and trying to find a way for that to feel like organic and real. Yeah, it was. That was a fun episode to do for sure, and it was great to have these great actors that are in the jock all the time. They really want to be out too. They want to, there it is as much as we love it, there is a monotony. The variety is lacking at times. So, but it's a very different job. What's so much fun about being in the jock too is uh, we're shooting like 80% of the time. We rehearse fairly fast, we get it going, and then we're shooting some cameras up and we're rolling a lot of the time, which is just not the case in most jobs. Most jobs you like are waiting around for a long time and you have a quick shot because it's especially with action. So a lot of that stuff is great fun to watch, but it's less engaging as an actor. Like I like being inside and doing all that stuff, but yeah, it's really fun to watch. I'm a fan of the show, even though I'd like procedurals have never been like something that I've been drawn to because I have trouble remembering names. I can't follow the plots as quickly. But I'm a fan of the show because I have to be. I mean, I want to be because I want to understand what what people like about it and why people are watching it, and so I really enjoy the writers' job too. It's a hard job. You're doing 22 episodes a season. You're trying to find diversity within those stories. They have to be high stakes the whole time, and so I'm always game, for things they're trying. And that was a fun one. And this season has been really fun. They're doing some big set pieces this year. They're trying to come at it from, I think, just a sort of a globally kind of more creative a way in thinking of how these the plots can end up in surprising intense situations. I don't want to give away too much, but I'm enjoying their aim this year.
I love that. And even with what you were just saying about how high the stakes often are, particularly looking at him being in the field in that last episode, I feel like anytime we see Jubal out in the field, it's because the stakes are so high that there's a reason for him to be outside of the jock. Even just thinking back to the episode where they're transporting the prisoner and he's in the van with him, and obviously they know that they're going to be ambushed at some point. And what's the difference in getting to do scenes and moments like that where that he's out in the field because the stakes are so high, but also he's operating in a very different way because he only has his set of eyes and he doesn't have access to 10 different screens, and he's not in conversation with people, you know, all in the moment in the same way.
Yeah, it's different. It's totally different. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's been a little while, and I'm like, oh, can I do the other thing? But I always it's fun. It's really fun to be out there and to be, responsive to your environment in a different way. There's when I was on Law and Order, I was that was the first time I was on a procedural, and I kind of like I didn't know what to expect. I didn't quite understand it. I'd come from 6 feet under, and where it was all character stuff, and whatever was going on inside the character's head was the subject of the scene, and that was challenging and difficult, and then I went on to something where the character stuff was very subtle. Was a line here or there, which initially seemed, I don't know. I was like, I don't know, um, it felt like it felt like I wasn't. It felt like an insult a little bit initially. I was like, well, do you think I can offer more? Of course, I realized that's not what it is. And just recently, I was watching that first season. I was on Law and Order, and it's so it felt so mature. Like these storylines, they're dealing with very serious subjects, and none of it's muddled up by the characters like complaining about their life. At the time, I was like, can I complain about my life more? That feels more like something I can offer. But watching it now, I'm like, wow, it's just very it's very mature. It's very intelligent. It's like dealing with these human beings that are dealing with human things that are challenging and deep. But it's not necessarily about their own human sort of challenges in life, and so anyway. But the reason I was saying that was the thing that was fun about that job became fun was um, taking in everything, being in an environment and allowing yourself to be affected by what is there in front of you, what you're coming upon, and your what how that lives inside you as an actor. That's something. It's more subtle. It's perhaps less consuming as what I have to do on this, but it's something that I think is it's really fun. I remember always remember when I was young, I loved a movie called Shampoo. And Warren Beatty, I remember him in a scene. I used to watch this scene of him at this party, and how he would react to the people walking by felt so alive and fresh, and just like like a cat. That's why babies or cat animals are fun to watch, because you're like, oh, that he's just in the moment. And so I try to embody that there, that kind of, because that's fun to watch. To watch somebody who feels like they don't know they're being watched, and they're shocked by what's around them. So when you're out in a prison bus, and and you're reacting to whatever it is, heightened things like bombs and guns, or just people walking down the street. It it gives you an opportunity to allow that to live in you in whatever way it does, and so yeah, I like it all.
It's such an interesting point as well that's so specific to the genre of procedurals, and even just thinking about storylines and moments where there's kind of a moral conflict, or okay, I have this idea of how we can solve it, and it's going to force us to go outside of the constraints in the box a little bit, but I think it's going to be effective, which also feels like is part of how Jubal works, but also Isabel. They both are very by the book people, but if it's going to be for the greater good, then sometimes they can push that line. And what's that like, playing a character where you can kind of have those internal moments, but again, what you were just describing, there's kind of a restraint to it. It's not this massive conflict that takes up an entire episode. It's just kind of these little moments throughout.
Yeah, and sometimes, I mean, like there's an episode this season where you're playing a lot of the same moments over and over again in different ways throughout 8 years of the same show. So, and there's certain episodes where the story has to revolve around a decision that perhaps Google's made many times in the past, but for some reason in this particular one, it's the subject. It was a challenging decision to make that has a an aftermath that is difficult to bear, and and so you have to you have to kind of put out of your mind certain rational thinking things, logical. Oh, well, he's done this a bunch of other times before. No, the story in this one is this. So how do I get to a place where this decision is a hard one to make? And I think this was in the first episode back, and it turns out badly, um, and how do I find a moment in there that can tell that story? And I think we did it, but I won't know until I see it, which is another fun thing about it. As the season progresses, by the end of the season, we're shooting and the thing airs in like 4 days. So that's really gratifying too, where you're like, well, that worked or that didn't work as well. But it took me a while. Like you have to watch the show, because sometimes there's some logic leaps that you think that's too big. There's no way they would make it. And sometimes you watch the show and you're like, oh, that didn't matter at all. It moved too quickly. No one's paying attention to that. And sometimes it does matter. So it's like finding the balance of what is the thing that you should be focusing your attention on. Again, I don't love wasted energy, especially because we have a crew of people who is working long hours. I don't like to talk forever. So it becomes like an instinct through, paying attention as much as you can to not overthinking stuff. You know what I mean? Knowing when, okay, this is something that's actually going to bump. So let's figure this out.
It's so fascinating because there's so many intricacies that are so specific to this particular genre of storytelling. So this has all been so fascinating to listen to and so interesting. So thank you so much, Jeremy. Really appreciate your time.
Of course. Thank you.